Hi, this is Ellen from the Chili Dog. Today I'm joining the shoulders of my Slipstream cardigan, and I'd like to teach you how to do the 3-needle bind-off. The 3-needle bind-off combines binding off and joining into a single process. It works well at shoulder seams on sweaters, especially if your work has a stitch pattern that is a little bit more complicated than just plain stockinette stitch. Let's look close up at a swatch that I made. When you do the 3-needle bind-off, on the wrong side of your work, there will be a slight ridge where your stitches are joined and bound off. But on the right side of your work, the bind-off is practically invisible. Like the name implies, you are going to need 3 knitting needles that are all the same diameter for the bind-off. Let's get started. Place the stitches to be joined on 2 separate needles. And it's important that you have the same number of stitches on each needle. Lay the fabric so that they're right sides together and that the needles are parallel to each other. Let me just move this yarn tail out of the way. Today I'm using DPNs. If you were using regular straight needles, you would want the needle tips to be pointing towards the right so that you can knit and bind off from right to left. You can use the same yarn that you were knitting with to bind off your stitches. Hold the 2 needles with stitches on them together in your left hand. I'm going to slide the stitches down so that we can start working them. And then hold the 3rd needle in your right hand. And now we want to knit the first stitch on the front needle and the first stitch on the back needle together. And to do that, you simply insert your right needle knitwise through the first stitch on the front, and then knitwise through the first stitch on the back, and then knit those 2 stitches together and drop them off the left needle. And again, we're going to knit the first stitches on the front and back together. So insert knitwise through the front needle, insert knitwise through the first stitch on the back needle, and then knit them together and drop them off the left needle. And now the bind off is much like a just regular knit bind off. You want to slip this first stitch over the top of the second. So to do that, you can use the back needle that's in your left hand and just lift that first stitch up over the second. Now we need to knit 2 more stitches together. So again, insert knitwise through the first stitch on the front, knitwise through the first stitch on the back, and knit them together and drop them off the left needle, and then pass the first stitch over the second. And one more time, insert knitwise through the first stitch on the front, knitwise through the first stitch on the back, knit them together, and then pass the first stitch over the second. And you would just continue on until all your stitches have been bound off, then cut your yarn and pull it through the last stitch. I finished binding off my shoulder, and as predicted, here on the wrong side I have just a little bit of a ridge, but here on the right side my pattern stitches line up nicely and the bind off is practically invisible. I hope you enjoyed learning how to do a 3-needle bind off, and if you'd like to try this technique in a pattern, head over to the shop section of thechillydog.com and look for my Slipstream cardigan. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!